It's now 6:30, and I'd like to call the meeting to order of the San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Commissioners. If we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Here.
Commissioner Chang-Crowley?
Present?
Commissioner Paravano?
Here.
Great, thank you. We have a quorum, and I'd like to note that President Matoush is absent, and Commissioner Brennan is also absent. But again, we still have a quorum, which means that we can conduct our business tonight. I'd like to open it up for public comment for item B, and that's public comments that can be made for any item that is not on the agenda. If there's public comment, I'd like to open that up now. Seeing that there is no public comment, I will close public comment, and then we will go to item C, which is commissioner comments. Any comments by? No? I have one comment, Steve, and this was in reference to an email that we received from the Vice Commodore of the Oyster Point Yacht Club. I think it was just a few days ago, and I was just wondering, I know that you responded to him, but I was just wondering if there's been any update. They were concerned about visiting cruisers being charged an overnight guest slip fee, and I just didn't, I'm sure you're addressing that. Is there any update that you could care?
No update yet.
Okay. Okay, I just want that to be known that I know that that's out there. Okay, on to item D, the consent calendar. Is there a motion to, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Does anyone have any concerns to pull off any items?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second?
Okay, all in favor? Roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Chang-Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passed unanimously, and we are now on to item E, number 4, which is the Prop SF Private Ferry Service at Oyster Point Marina and Park Commercial Services Activity Permit. If we could get a staff report, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. We have before your board tonight a request for a commercial activity permit for a new private ferry service, specifically for the private company Genentech. This is a separate company that will operate this ferry service in conjunction with the Genentech. And essentially, we do not have a fee structure set up for this type of an operation. The closest thing we can come with is what we charge the charter boat per passenger. But given the volume, the high volume of this proposed ferry service, the math doesn't work out. So the applicant has requested a modification of the fee structure. And as pointed out in the staff report, this would be bringing, it would not conflict with the WETA's service. It's a totally separate operation. It will operate out of marinas that are not serviced by WETA. I can point out too that I did speak with WETA, that the planning director, and he did not have any concerns, other than he stated as long as their boat doesn't interfere with the operations of their boat. So I have tonight to speak to you as the representative of Prop SF. His name is James Jaber, and he's here tonight to talk to you and answer any questions. So I'd like to turn it over to him.
Great, thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me, commissioners. And Randy, thanks. I'll just give a little background. I've been a boat captain for many years. Started the first commercial operation in Lake Tahoe for parasailing, and have worked my way up through different operations. When I got to the Bay, there was a common complaint from everyone about traffic, and I think traffic affects everybody's lives. Kids don't get to have dinner with their parents. It's very inconsistent, and so it was affecting the work-life balance of a lot of my loved ones. And so when I was working on the Bay, I just realized there wasn't a lot of boats out there, and started poking around about the feasibility of running a private service like Prop, and quickly found out that there's a large demand for what we're offering. We've been operating under what they call a charter charter permit from the California Public Utility Commission for the last 8 months with one of the Bay Area's largest employers. We've seen, a lot of the ridership is climbing and going up, and we've also, last August, we applied for the Common Carrier Authority, which would allow us to post a public schedule and run a public service in the Bay, in addition to WEDA's lines. So that's a ways off, but these are two separate projects. The Genentech project would be running under the same permit as the project that we're currently operating, which doesn't trigger CEQA because we're using existing facilities, and we're also taking, we're providing a cleaner air alternative, or more of environmentally friendly alternative than 50 people driving. We have them on one boat, so that's why it wouldn't trigger a CEQA review. The other thing I want to point out is that the projected start date is October 1st, so we're hoping to complete this last piece to fall into our timeline. The boats take about 120 days to build. They're built in Seattle. There's a lot of logistics to getting the equipment, the engines and drives and that sort of thing. So we're hoping to get this agreed on with Randy and you guys, and come to what we think is a fair fee structure given our other facilities, so that we can move forward on beginning the boat building process. So the client is currently interested in making sure that we have the right fees or reasonable fees, so that we can enter into the contract and get the boats built and start service here in October. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to.
I have a question. I know that it says that it's a reduced fee. Reduced by how much? And I understand why it would be. I'm just curious.
Well, doing the math based on the proposed or projected ridership, it would be about a $50,000 a year reduction.
Okay.
I mean, and that's at the minimum ridership. James and I spoke, and doing the math, the simple math, at $2.25 a head, it comes out to about $60,000 a year at the minimum projections, up to $120,000 a year at the maximum projections. And the fee structure we're proposing is roughly $10,000 and almost $11,000.
Okay.
So proportionally, if you spread that out, and that's why we looked carefully at the number, if you spread that out, we kind of scaled it so it matches and takes into account the frequency that we would be using the dock. So, and we're not staying overnight. We're there for a short period of time, and we're not requesting any parking.
Right, no, I get that. It's basically like the buses between San Francisco and the Silicon Valley, right, in terms of employees of Google or Facebook or Yahoo, where they're transporting, except this would be by ferry. Is that right?
Similar, yeah, very similar. It's like the corporate shuttle but on the water. Yeah.
Right.
And what's unique about this is that we're not adding buses. We're actually taking those buses off from the points north where we're bringing people in. And for the companies, the reason we're seeing a lot of growth on the private side is because it's getting people to work is becoming a real problem. Right. And economic growth in the Bay Area has, for the first time, Google has this data where they're unable to attract the talent because of traffic. Right. And the commute.
So your contract is with Genentech, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so as to the district, and this is totally separate, but in some ways haven't we had some conversations with working with Genentech about the bathrooms or what's going on with that?
There's a small project, Commissioner Giancarelli, at Oyster Point, where Genentech gave some funds to the city of South San Francisco to build a public restroom facility near the ferry terminal. That building has been built, And my understanding is that the site work plans that the city is doing are almost complete. And there will be some grading and a little work that needs to get done to place that building, and that should happen by the fall of this year.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of separate, but I know that your contract is with Genentech, and I know that we had some facility
Yeah. Now, this
talks
is-
with.
Yes, so this is a South City project.
You're right.
South City Genentech project, and happening on our.
Harbor District
property.
jurisdiction, right.
We operate under the JDA.
Okay. Okay.
And I
Yes,
might
so-
add that when I first met with James a few, 6 weeks or so ago to start talking about this, there were representatives of Genentech there. I believed or thought that they were going to be here tonight, but he
Yeah,
just informed me
they-
there was some conflict, so they couldn't make it.
Yeah.
But they are obviously very supportive and excited about the
Right.
project.
Okay.
Their political, sorry if you guys, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no,
But
no,
go
no,
ahead.
no.
Their,
Go on.
their political outreach has been interfacing with WETA, and I think they may have reached out to you guys about the project. And
Well,
just
probably the staff, right?
the staff,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know. But they're being very careful because they represent the majority of the ridership for the WETA ferry. So
Right.
we've been very careful working with them to determine how far out they want us to go and to stay away from that draw. So that
Right.
line comes from Oakland. We're not even going to Emeryville. Actually, we're going to go further to Richmond to stay completely out of that, so that there's no conflict there. And they're in agreement for that. So
WETA is?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Robert?
Okay, I think you just answered my question. So I'm just going to ask it anyway. So many years ago, when I sat on the Water Transit Advocates Authority group, whatever it was, many, many years ago, where we had the mayors of South San Francisco, Redwood City, and we had all these stakeholders come together because the whole idea was to work with Genentech and get a ferry service going, and now it's successfully at Oyster Point. And when it started, I actually rode the ferry to work because I work in Oakland.
Oh.
So it took me, it was amazing. It took me directly to Jack London Square, like 200 yards from where my office is. It was like perfect until they changed the hours, and then they removed one of the directions, like the coming home direction, they removed it. So it's like, it would have left me stranded in Oakland and I would have to take BART back home. It's just this really weird thing.
Right.
And I understand about ridership, you know, it can't sustain all, 10 of us going in that direction, whereas all the Genentech people from the East Bay coming this way were like hundreds of them. So we knew we weren't going to compete in that regard. So my question to you was going to be, okay, am I going to be able to take this ferry to Oakland? It sounds like no, because you're not going to have the same routes. It sounds like totally different.
It's a very good question. So we're working with, the state is actually, they have a keen eye in what Prop is offering, and that's a nimble, relatively inexpensive project compared to what is currently out there with the 10-year funding cycle, the 7-year project timeline. We, through the Bay Area Council, projects like this is a free look at what public ferry service could be in these different cities. We start with the private; it's funded. There's no capital costs. It's all done by us, and like I said, it's a free look. So the other areas in the Bay are interested, and we're talking with transit authorities about creating a more relevant network that can move people to Oakland or even San Leandro from here. There's a between the 20th and about the 3rd, we've got about 90 people that were requesting service to Oyster Point from San Leandro, and that is just it's not even on the 50. It's not on any plans for WETA to do something like that. Mm-hmm. So we're being respectful. We're not adversarial with them, and we think that eventually, in fact, in the last transportation meeting, they had alternative dock designs for our boats for future, locations for their docks. Because right now that it's a $33 million dock in Oyster Point that we can't even use. So our fast, more I guess it's more nimble model could hopefully begin they'll take a closer look at us, and we can start working together on planning and disaster relief and things like that, which is initially why they were created.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to finish up. So,
Sure.
thank you for your answer. And for me personally, regardless of whether I get to use the ferry or not, I'm going to support this on principle because I do believe in public transportation and more transportation options. So
Thank
if
you.
people want to bike to work, want to boat to work, want to drive to work, and even though I have to wrestle across the Bay Bridge every morning, you know, we're all going to have more options. So I will support this on that because
Thank you.
I believe in more transit options for people.
Thanks for that.
Any comments?
I'd just like to say that I'm really encouraged by this proposal, and it seems like there's some details that need to get worked out, but I think with, from my perspective, I would support this. And I just feel like anytime you can mitigate any type of traffic nightmares, and utilize other types of navigation that are accessible to the residents of the Bay, I would do a lot to encourage that. And I think just to come up with resolving some of the details in terms of the fee structure. But other than that, I'm very encouraged by this.
Yeah, thank you.
It provides a great way to begin someone's workday and end one's workday. I think it's in terms of the challenges and the stresses that one encounters at the workplace. Being on the Bay offers a different alternative to being stuck in traffic.
Yeah, looking out the window onto the water, it's a pretty nice thing. We want to bring this brand of transportation to all residents of the Bay. So as a privately funded company, we're just getting started with the smaller companies to sort of prove out the concept and get our footing in the Bay Area. So working with you guys is crucial to getting us going, you know, and maybe with your support, it could help our plight with the state getting our permit, because we'd like to use or include Oyster Point in our network, in our overall vision, which will hopefully get presented to the governor in the fall when these boats arrive. These are the boats we'd like to use throughout the Bay Area. The one we have now is more of a proof of concept, and we're taking what we've learned over the last 8 months and putting that into designing these boats.
If I
So
could
there's-
make an additional
Please,
comment.
yeah,
Sure.
and then Robert.
I also, I was part of the commission that was on the process of the site selection for Oyster Point. I know it was a very competitive process for Weta to be choosing the Oyster Point. And I think that this confirms that this site is a very accessible site, and it's very beneficial for identifying and mitigating a lot of the traffic problems that are in the Bay Area.
That comment is spot on.
Yeah.
The people can now, there's other opportunities instead of just coming for work. So people can go both ways. It can attract residents to this area if I like this area, you know, and if it means instead of just people moving to where the school districts are good. Now, by adding prop network to the whole Bay Area, it sort of increases property value throughout the whole Bay Area instead of in little pockets, because residents can come and go without factoring traffic into their entire life. So that's a spot on comment.
Yeah, I would also like to commend you on your outreach, communication with other agencies. I think that's very noble.
Thank you.
Very first class, showing that nobody wants to step on other people's toes and other people's businesses, but working together, we can provide a very amicable and professional solution to a lot of the problems that face the residents.
Thank you. Thanks.
You raised one more issue that I wanted to address that actually I support this for two reasons. One is transit options, and number two, it aids in our master planning efforts, because here's the thing. I I'm not going to speak for my fellow commissioners, I would love to see Oyster Point become more of a destination. And I know City of South San Francisco, and I'm not going to speak for City Council of South San Francisco, but I'm sure they want to make Oyster Point a destination. And this does a lot more towards that. As you just mentioned about interconnectedness of the whole Bay Area, it really lends to that, and it's a great opportunity. So I'm supporting it for 2 reasons.
It takes, sorry, won't spend too much of your time, but it takes about 15 or 20 minutes to get here from Alameda.
That's right.
And the same from San Leandro.
So just a quick question, just based on the numbers that I see, it looks, is your contract with Genentech for 5 years?
Yes.
Okay, and then then are they just piloting this right now? And I guess this is only during the work week, right? Not on the weekends, or?
Correct.
Is it both? I mean, because some people might work on the weekends.
We're starting for purposes of planning and budgets, we're doing just the Monday through Friday for now, just to get it kind of
Going.
kicked off and started and get through all the approvals and introductions and discoveries so that's the strategy with the schedule.
Okay, great. If there aren't any other questions, then we can,
I'm ready.
yes, Steve.
Thank
Our
you,
general
Mr.
manager.
Chamberlain, And I'd just like to say to echo Commissioner Bernardo, transit options are a wonderful thing. And anything that can work to get traffic off the freeways in the Bay Area is a good thing. I do want to emphasize, I know it's been stated, I just want to be really clear though, that the project that's proposed is a private project for
Right.
employees of Genentech.
Right,
Okay. And
right,
the second thing
for
that-
5 years.
Yeah. And our commercial activity permits are
1 year, okay, okay.
And then the other thing I'd like to just point out is the CEQA issue, and I'd like to dig just a little bit deeper into that. We understand that it's maybe exempt, but in that case, I would recommend the addition of 2 words to the motion proposed, which would say, and all other related or necessary documents.
Okay, we haven't had a motion yet, so we can certainly
If
include
the
that.
motion would be made as written, if we could add those 2 words or necessary, then that would greatly facilitate us moving forward, and the approval could be granted, and we just need to cross some Ts and dot some Is going down the road.
So the, sorry, did you have?
Nope.
So the permit is for 1 year, so that means every year for the next 5 years, we would have to renew it, is that correct? Because you've got a 5-year contract with Genentech.
Yeah,
right?
and the strategy there would be, I mean, ideally, we'd like to get, like in Martinez, we got a 5-year non-exclusive there so that we know what the fee structure is. There won't be any surprises for, down the road, so that they can all be budgeted out.
Right, but you understand that tonight's motion would be for just a 1-year permit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then how would we, so next year we'd have to come back and then maybe,
On a slightly unrelated note, Commissioner Giancarelli, I would like, before the year is out, to look at the commercial activity permit process overall.
Okay.
So that we do have permit holders who are making investments in their businesses, and to be able to provide them a little more certainty by perhaps extending out some of those permits for existing holders for 3 years instead of 1.
okay,
But that's something I'd like to do before the year is out.
okay. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that even though your contract is for 5 years with Genentech, this permit is, the approval is for 1 year with, obviously in the future, looking at our overall policy for permits.
Do we add language like in good faith, we
Well,
negotiate the subsequent years, or?
I think that we've got this 1 year thing guaranteed, and y'all can create and develop language as we look at our policy overall, because would not be just for this.
Yep.
For this particular permit, it would be for all of the permits of the Harbor District as a matter of public policy.
And it's worth noting that we have some commercial activity permit holders who have been holders of permits with
Right.
the district for many, many.
Many years, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not as worried about that, but I just want you to understand that for now, what we're voting on is the 1 year.
I see, yeah.
Okay. But we'll, yeah, so if there is no more discussion, is there a motion? Do you have? a
Yes,
discussion?
I'm ready to move.
Okay.
I move that Prop SF Private Ferry Service at Oyster Point Marina and Park Commercial Services Activity Permit approve Prop SF LLC prop request for a reduced fee and authorize the general manager to sign commercial services activity permit and all other related and necessary documents.
Or necessary documents.
And/or.
And/or,
necessary
okay.
documents.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Chambers?
Aye.
Commissioner Paramano?
Great, the motion unanimously passes. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Look forward to, maybe we can do like some sort of event with the city, maybe the police department and some schools can come down to the boats and we can, go out on the boats and bring some more awareness to maybe the idea of a future public service, because that's the goal.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now we're moving on to item 5, which is to adopt the final budget. Can we have a staff report by Steve and Glenn?
Thank you, Commissioner Jancarelli, and it is actually with great pleasure that I bring to you the final budget, draft final budget, hopefully for adoption this evening. I believe the commissioners had, and the public have had multiple opportunities to review this. Preliminary budget was adopted in April. Glenn will speak to some of the details. But the thing that I want to call out is Glenn's effort in that the grand jury and LAFCO both focused in particular, our budget and our tracking of our public and enterprise funds. And so when I started, sat with Glenn and we figured out if you will, an architecture of the budget and how it would flow together with everything from the enterprise funds at Oyster Point rolling up and rolling up and rolling up into an overarching consolidated budget. That all of that detail is in the document, that I believe that it's organized well. On adoption, this will be uploaded onto our OpenGov website, and I think Glenn, with the support of his staff, has done a terrific job in bringing this document to you. I know it's one of which I'm proud, and I think it really increases the transparency and accountability of the district in its presentation. With that, for the numbers and anything else, I'll turn it over to Glenn.
Okay. Do we have a?
Oh, yes, sorry.
I know that you've been through this several times, so we'll try to move quickly unless you have questions. We've had brought to you before tables and we've charts, but we wanted to actually, although there'll be some of that, we do want to highlight some important points, some of which I think are points of celebration that for going forward. So we can go on to the next slide. This is only a chart that's important because the green area just highlights what you as a commission, these are the appropriation levels that you are setting. The general manager and staff need to come to you if we should exceed any of those line item appropriations. So that's the importance of this chart.
And the green highlight.
Green height.
Changes between the preliminary budget you adopted.
Right, and the next slide will show that a little clearer. The important thing about this chart is that as we planned to do, our adopted budget projections were conservative. We got more information about the year. The news is better. We have about $200,000 better bottom line than you did at adopted preliminary budget. Again, you've seen this before. This is our use of revenue. You can see that relationally speaking, the preliminary budget and the adopted budget are pretty close. And of course, the big difference being the payoff of the loan in the previous year. And again, on expenditures, same story. Say goodbye to the blue section. It will never be there again.
Blue section
The
Being the
debt.
loan, the debt payoff on the
Never
loan.
say no.
Well, maybe we use blue for something else.
Yeah, there you go.
I did want to talk about some of the significant revenue changes since the adopted preliminary budget, rates and fees, some of the trends from the third quarter, state mandated cost reimbursement and property tax projections. Rates and fees, that discussion is going to be going on in midsummer. The general manager wants to reach out to the coastside fishing community, and we want to talk about the fees, organize that so that we can get maximum participation from commissioners who may feel they have potential conflicts, try to arrange that discussion so that we can get maximum involvement. The revenue impact can always be recognized later in the process. Main things that happened as we looked through the third quarter with revenues is the third quarter was better enough from the second quarter that we increased our enterprise projections by 187,000. We reduced our abandoned vessel grant because we didn't utilize the funds as much this year as we thought, so being conservative, there was a $24,000 decrease. But I also increased the interest expectation by 21,000. Despite paying off the loan, our bank balance continues to rise, and I was being too conservative at the time of the adopted preliminary budget. The state mandated cost reimbursement, it is unclear whether we will be eligible funds, so the safest thing to do was to pull the $87,000 revenue out of the budget. And of course, we'll recognize it later when we have more certainty. Property tax projections, May results came in better than expected, projecting that across as a positive impact of $261,000. Some of the significant expenditure changes, staffing, professional services, operating reductions, and capital project rollover. The general manager took a close look at requests from operations. We had previously not funded a deputy harbor master position that was reflected in position control, so that has been made as a correction. We also added 2 additional harbor worker positions. The objective there is to improve the maintenance at the harbor and marina, and also I think it will help our deputy harbor masters focus on ordinance and policy enforcement. The cost of that was $182,000. We'll talk about that when we get to operating, but we were 100% able to fund that by reducing our operating expenditures. And I'm confident we've done that without hampering our ability to operate with the appropriation. And also we're hoping that there will be a potential increase in enforcement revenue as a byproduct, although the purpose of ordinance enforcement is compliance, not to collect fines. Professional services reflects the contract with the Resource Conservation District approved the last meeting. The security services at Oyster Point, which I neglected to put in my calculation for adopted preliminary, but congratulations, we've concluded our negotiations with our bargaining units, and we do not have to worry about funding an expensive contract with a labor negotiator. So the additional appropriation only came to $118,000. Operating expense, across the board, I think I very safely and conservatively reduced operating expenses by $260,000. Just to focus on one item, repairs and maintenance, which certainly is very important. I looked at what we spent in the last 4 years. There simply wasn't any data to support the huge appropriation that was there. Even where I have left it at 202, it's 50% more than we have managed to spend in the last 4 years. And it's important to keep in mind that if we need that money for repairs and maintenance, if with the additional harbor workers, they're doing that work, there's no shame in coming back and saying, we're repairing and maintaining our harbors, we need to look at an additional appropriation. But I do think this 202 is more realistic. Capital project rollover, there were items that were not finished this year that will be rolled into next year. And that accounts for all the increase in capital projects between the adopted preliminary budget and the final budget. There are also some short-term factors that will influence not just decisions that are made in the budget, but decisions to come. Oyster Point Marine, I'm actually want to turn this one over to the general manager because he's been much more involved in many of these topics.
Oyster Point Marina, as you are aware, we are operating under the terms of a joint powers agreement with the City of South San Francisco. That agreement runs out in 2026. As you are also aware, there is a pending development that may move forward, and should that occur, that will affect possibly how we look at some of the maintenance and improvements that we want to make, or should be making. We intend to have a more in-depth discussion about that with the commission in the very near future. Things are moving fairly quickly, but nothing is sort of finalized yet. So we will be coming to you in the very near future with that. Prior to that, however, a number of years back, the original leases on the property were and have continued to be known as the King leases. And a number of years back, we received a request from King Enterprises to assign those leases to Shorenstein/SKS. We now have received, and we are reviewing, and will bring to the commission in the near future, a request for the assignment of those leases, again, from the actual company name is Oyster Point NV, with a request to assign the leases to Oyster Point Development, a company owned by a much larger company. We are reviewing that, and we'll bring that back to you very soon. One of the things there too is the bait shop building. We know we've talked about this quite a bit. The bait shop building is a, do you remember the square footage, Randy?
1440, I believe, 24 by 60.
24 by 60, 1,440 square feet, and it is a rather older relocatable building and generated about $12,000 a year, $12,000 to $15,000 a year in revenue. One of the things that we did was we did a request for proposals for that project and didn't get any responsive requests. And so now, in light of pending development there, we would like to think differently about that site, that building, and work more cooperatively perhaps with a potential developer of the site and the city of South San Francisco, because we would anticipate that anything other than patching up that relocated building would be a significant investment, and whether that would be appropriate for us to do in terms of the JPA that expires in 2026 is something that we would need to consider. One of the things that we also need to consider is the JPA 2026 and beyond. What happens in 2027? There's still a marina to run. Does the city want to run that marina? Do we want to continue running that marina? Do we want to run the park facilities? Does the city want to run the park facilities? This is a sort of higher level policy discussion that needs to take place between the city and the district initially through the Oyster Point Liaison Committee, and that will provide us some direction. We'd like to think that a lot of those conversations will happen over the course of the next 6 months. But in short, these are some of the major, what we might call short-term factors that are influencing our thinking, our budgeting, our planning going forward. And that's that on Oyster Point. Any questions? I'm happy to answer them. With that, I'll turn it back to Glenn or for the other issues.
Staffing, just highlighting the staffing issues that you're well aware of. One of the things I wanted to point out is by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year of this budget, we will have a number of staff that has still only been with us a relatively short time. So that influences decision-making. I'll also say that one of the things that this recognizes is our recruitments have been moving at a very rapid pace and have represented significant effort. And some of these positions were part of the recent management reorganization, and those are marked. This staffing impacts the ability of the district to maintain and initiate our projects. Again, just to point out that the percentage of regular staff that was hired after March 31st, 2016, when we get to the end of the year, 58% of our finance staff will have been hired in that period, and 30% of our harbor and arena crews. So it's a lot of work for recruitment, and hopefully symbolizes a lot more getting done. That's one of the things that we want to emphasize, is that while there's a lot of project in this budget, there's a lot of resource. So we think we've put together a realistic plan. This is position control. It's similar to what you've looked at before, except that we've added the 4 harbor workers. Two harbor workers, for a total of 4.
There you go. Good save.
Good save. So rates, fees, and ordinances, we've talked about that some. We'll have some additional policy setting. The additional policy setting, really, these are questions that you may not even fully discuss even next year, but they're important. Why do we have discounts? Are the discounts too much, too little? A lot of those kinds of issues. How are we, what is the overall philosophy for what we're trying to achieve with our rates, our discounted rates? What activities do we wish to encourage? Those are discussions that will start this year but may go on for some time.
But that's not included in this budget.
Correct. We've
Just-
pulled any rate and fee increase out
Right.
of this budget. Ordinances, we do need to go over our ordinances. There'll be an update of that. That'll be a major administrative project to bring that before you. The goal is to carry out our mission statement. We have a lot of ordinances that reflect positions that are no longer in existence, so we have to update those. And we also want to reflect our terminology matrix to make sure that the board is focused on policy and the staff is focused on procedures. We also need to modernize our bail structure. We have citations that we write for offenses where it's basically just a nuisance. The bail is so low that it really doesn't discourage the behavior, and that is the goal. One of the high priorities on your goals and objectives was property management. That's also a focus for administration in the coming year. We want to have compliance with our lease terms. We want to validate our information. We want to consider an RFP for property management. We definitely want to maximize renewal income where possible. And we want to establish equity of terms and equity of enforcement. The latter may be a long-term project as we start running to the end of some of the lease terms, but that's the goal. We do need to get a reserve policy. That's going to be heard by the Finance Committee. Staff will have input. But the goal is to responsibly and transparently provide for unanticipated and anticipated events. And this is the last slide, and just a comment on this. This is our second to last slide. These are our total reserves at the time of the final budget. And again, you can see not a whole lot of change. The cash is continuing to roll in, and even with the plans for the year, we have a very healthy reserve. And now the last slide, and to me this is a great ending slide. This is looking forward into the future. This assumes that we complete all of our $20 million capital improvement plan in that time. It assumes that we are not successful in getting other agencies to participate or grants, which I think is unlikely. And you can see we still have a very healthy reserve. And to the extent that every budget tells a story, I think you're looking at a story now of a very financially strong district. And I think that is a strong tribute to leadership, the commission, and the general manager that we're able to present this budget. And I think it is really something for the district to be proud of.
So that last page, Glenn, was that, didn't have it in my staff report unless I missed it, which is possible.
It may not have been in the staff report. It might be presentation.
So the only reason I bring it up is that I think at the LAFCO meeting, Steve, I think Supervisor Horsley wanted to understand what our CIP plan looked like. Is this something that we can give him that might be satisfactory to him?
Yes.
I mean, obviously the budget's gonna have to go to the Board of Supervisors anyway, right? The adopted budget.
Yes.
We
But
adopt the budget, and statutorily, we're required to submit it to the Board of Supervisors by July 31st.
August
Right.
1st, I think.
August 1st,
Okay, well,
on July 31st.
right, but the thing is, he specifically asked for
Yes.
this, so I think we need to
Yeah.
point it out to him, but it should be included into the budget that we submit to the Board of Supervisors.
Commissioner Corrali, while that chart was not in the staff report, it will be on the website as part of this
Right.
presentation, and we might consider amending that into the budget document as well.
Yeah, I think it's an important page, because it was specifically asked for by the LAFCO committee, and Supervisor Horsley in particular.
When the commission is done with comments, I've been asked to read into the public record some portion of the resolution.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, we can start the discussion, but I am also happy to open up public testimony if there's any member of the public who would like to offer any testimony. I don't have any slips, but just in case, I didn't want you to miss your opportunity. Okay, so seeing that there is no public testimony at this time, maybe we can open it up for commissioner discussion. If you have any questions, this would be now. I have some questions, but I'm happy to open it up first to anyone. Or do you want me to?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'd like to start off, first of all, by thanking Glenn for completing this in a very, very readable and professional manner. And also, the timing of this is very, very critical. And certainly, I really appreciate all the work that you've done for this. I know that you have relied on a lot of your newly appointed financial staff to provide you with a lot of the data. So please extend thanks to your colleagues on this. My question specifically is on the reserve component of the budget. And if I can draw your attention to page 14 of 16. It's on the back side.
Or 40 of 128, right?
4128, it's a section titled Reserves. And it continues on to the next page. My question for staff is, in this section, it discusses the staff recommendation regarding reserves, while it's, at the same time, it leaves the door open for further review and comments on the reserve policy. And my question is, could we approve staff recommendation on the reserve policy as is?
Or, can I add on
Sure.
to that page? Because I had the same thing circled, and I think I know where you're coming from, because I had the same question. So, the current budget shows the staff recommended, the reserves shown in the final budget reflect the staff recommended policy. But then it says, but it will be adjusted to reflect the final policy as it is finally adopted by this commission. So I'm not sure if we adopt the budget today, is that considered just the staff recommended policy for reserves, or is it also, is this the same recommendation that you would give to the finance committee for discussion before it's brought to the board? Does that make any sense at
Yeah.
all? Do we have two different reserve policies that we're discussing here?
Let me separate the two. Of course, when you approve this, these are reserves. They can only be changed by a majority of the commission. However, the policy, these would be what staff would recommend. However, certainly we will keep an open mind at the discussion with the finance committee, this commission, to direct us to bring the reserve policy to the finance committee, and we don't want to be presumptuous about the outcome of that.
But if we approve this now, is there anything that should even be discussed at the finance committee level?
I think
That's a good point.
the reserve policy is mentioned simply, reserves are addressed in the staff report, in the budget document. But I think it's important to remember that if you approve the budget and the spending and the revenue, then the reserves are what the reserves are.
Based on the current numbers in the budget?
Based on where we start the year,
Right,
what we anticipate bringing in, what we anticipate spending. You know, the reserve amounts are the results of math.
right,
And what we have demonstrated, I think, is that regardless of what we do, we can't approach anything that might be established in a reserve policy. There is nothing in the budget that you adopt this evening that would necessarily be changed by a reserve policy. A reserve policy would say, we believe that you should, that the district should maintain 30% of anticipated operating revenue
Right.
as an unassigned reserve.
right, without the specific numbers that are in this budget?
Without the specific
Right.
numbers, because the numbers are going to be the simple.
Right,
So I think in adopting the budget this evening, you're leaving the door wide open for any discussion of a reserve policy, which does not necessarily address numbers per se.
right, okay.
At a point in the future. And also, remember too, that budgets are amended on a regular basis. They're planning tools, they're communication tools, and they're not, they're subject to amendment at any time by this board.
I would also say that if I have done the quality job that I have tried to do, the reserves will only be greater.
You've
Because I've
done a
tried to be
great job,
conservative.
Glenn. Thank you. Okay, that answers my question. So by adopting the budget, we'd be adopting the reserve numbers in the budget, but not necessarily a reserve policy.
Correct.
Right. Do you have any other comments? I interrupted you. That's why Pietro, 'cause- sorry.
I was wondering, getting back to this section, if, this is the third paragraph.
Third paragraph.
It would begin, staff will bring to the finance committee a reserve policy.
Right, if you would like to change that, because that was a direction from the commission, that, I would suggest that that be a item on a future agenda. But so far, that was the direction that we had, was to bring the reserve policy to finance committee for discussion.
But, okay, I understand it, but we could also, since this is under discussion of a budget, we could also include that change in a motion made tonight
What change?
to eliminate, let's say, to eliminate the third,
Is your goal, Commissioner Paravano, to not bring a reserve policy to the board or the finance committee?
well, no, that's not the goal. It's, already there is a process that staff has used to determine reserves. And the designation for the reserves.
Building on previous designations and previous action by this board on the adoption of the preliminary budget, where in order to fund our capital expenditures next year, we moved some numbers around and eliminated what Glenn and I felt were sort of redundant categories of reserves. And that was approved in the adoption of the preliminary budget. That has not been changed. Is that correct, Glenn?
No, the only way the numbers have been changed is simply updates that were available from the financial statement that was introduced at the last meeting and actual cash balances.
So to get to that conclusion, the staff used some sort of process.
direction from this board
Right.
at the adoption of the preliminary budget.
So what this paragraph refers to is that there will be further revision of the reserves policy.
Staff has not addressed a reserves policy. What we have done is looked at the designated reserve accounts and cleaned those up a bit. And then the budget document, the reserve numbers are reflective of the expenditures and the revenues. A reserve policy has not been looked at yet by this commission or the finance committee. A reserve policy would be one that said, as I mentioned briefly, that the district will maintain a certain percentage of anticipated operating revenues in an unassigned reserve. The district shall maintain a reserve account for facilities improvements, for vehicles, vessels, and equipment replacement on an amortized schedule to be updated with any capital expenditures. And those are the policy level statements that's the discussion we've not had with the finance committee or this commission yet. And won't address numbers specifically, will be reflective of percentages or allocations, but not dollar amounts. Does that, I hope I'm addressing your.
I would think, keeping with the terminology matrix, the policy of the reserves would be, broad and general statements, as the general manager described, on percentages. The procedures, usually agencies are not in the position where they have enough adequate reserves and are deciding where to allocate them. They're building their reserves. So the procedures as to how those are allocated would be a procedural matter, I would think, as part of the reserve policy. But the broad overview of what a healthy reserve is for the district, that would be the discussion that would
That would be the
happen
policy.
both here and at the finance committee.
So it's a completely separate issue.
Yeah.
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Great, thank you. Thanks for explaining that.
Okay.
So basically, a reserve policy would go to the finance committee first before it goes to the board. So I'm not understanding why you're focusing on this this paragraph about staff will bring to the finance committee a reserve policy that will establish and maintain. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's,
Well,
is that clear?
yeah, it
Okay.
is, and I think the way it was explained is that that was already decided by the commission on the process of developing a reserve policy. Or can we change this?
The process to develop the reserve policy
Yeah.
has been decided, that
Can't we
staff
change
would
it? No.
generate, talk to the finance committee, bring to the board for adoption. The state of the reserves currently, as shown in the budget document, is reflective of board discussion
Right.
and adoption of the preliminary budget. But it's not a policy statement, it's just basically a numbers statement.
That's the
Okay.
budget stuff.
Policy will follow.
Okay, can we, in the motion, to whatever direction we're gonna go on the budget, regarding that third paragraph, can we say, instead of staff will bring to the finance committee, staff will bring to the commission?
Absolutely, I recommend it as a separate motion.
I am curious about the agenda item. I mean, I like the idea, but maybe it should be agendized?
Yeah.
Well, or is it part of the budget discussion? I mean, I don't know. I haven't even thought about that. 'Cause
I mean,
think-
I fully agree that if a majority of the commission wants to hear it directly, then you should make that direction. I'm just not sure if we're Brown Act okay
Thank
right
you.
now.
Thank you, Glenn. I think that's right.
I do not want to spend time with another committee if the commission's ready to hear it.
But also we're veering off topic. The topic you're addressing is the development, the means and methods for development of a reserves policy. The topic that was agendized for discussion this evening is the adoption of the budget. And they are actually two separate, related, but separate items. So to introduce a second motion under the Brown Act and the way the agenda was noticed would be inappropriate.
Well, I'm not necessarily thinking about a second motion, I'm thinking about including that in the motion.
I think, Commissioner Paravano, if I may, with all due respect, I
Because
think
this is part of the report.
this is part of the staff report. This is not, this is a sort of a narrative background discussion. Pages through 16 are part of the narrative discussion in the background for the adoption of the budget, which begins on page 43 of 128. And so the action will be to review and discuss the staff report and use that as a basis of discussion and allow staff to answer questions. Staff wrote the staff report with the intention of providing that background. But the document that you will be adopting begins after that paragraph that you're talking about. The document you would be adopting starts on page 43 and runs through page 43 of 128 and runs through page 95 of 128, and then 97 of 128 is the resolution. But it's really
Okay.
Well, I can see where Commissioner Paravano is coming from, and I actually agree with that. I mean, that's probably not a surprise to some people that I mean, the reserves is such a big part of this budget. I mean, let's face it, it's a big part, and I don't know, I think it should just come back to the board. I mean, if we can't incorporate it into the motion to adopt the budget, then I don't know how we can do it. I mean, I agree that it should come to the full board before it goes to the budget's been presented to the full board before it went to the finance committee. So the reserves policy should kind of be in the same vein, same process. I mean, especially since the reserves is such a big part of the budget, and it's the thing in question.
What I'm hearing is a desire that the reserve policy come back to the full board.
Yes, and then
Okay.
direct,
Okay.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
what I expressed with the budget, right? To have the budget come to the full board and provide direction to the finance committee to look at things that might need a little more delving into. And maybe that's the same process that you're thinking about for the reserve policy. I don't want to speak for you, I'm
Right.
assuming that's the same thing, and I would agree with that.
Okay, but it's a separate item from the
Right, I
adoption
know.
of the budget, but I think it's sufficient to say that staff hears you.
Okay.
Yeah. I would want to check the minutes to see if there was a specific board direction,
Okay.
but because
Well,
I.
my understanding is there
Yeah, previously.
was.
But in any case, you should have that opportunity to change that direction.
The only reason I know that it was is that I was absent from that meeting, and I was reminded that the board voted to have this go to the finance committee first, which is not necessarily the process that we used when we dealt with the budget. And I would prefer to stay on using the same process. But that's just me. But I hear you, that that's a separate motion, a separate item. But again, it's such a big part of this budget. I mean, we're here tonight to adopt the 16-17 final budget, and the finance committee isn't here, so that's another concern to me. Any other comment?
I do, just very briefly. I just want to say, just very briefly, I don't know if this is what, the third, fourth time that we've seen this, and fifth time. Thank you. The every iteration just it just gets better. I really like the visuals, and I like the way everything is presented. I mean, in my years here at the Harbor District, I have to say that this budget is sort of the like the perfect example of how to make like budget for dummies, like for people like me who don't really understand this stuff, okay? And it just laid out so perfectly, the colors and the way the bar graphs work, it's just so perfect in terms of how it explains everything. And and even on your slides of sort of what the priorities are and such, the bullet points, it's so simplified and user-friendly that I really applaud this. Of course, I'm going to support this. I just want to thank the finance team again for such a great effort on making this so easily digestible for the average person who doesn't understand all these numbers. So I want to thank the finance team for that.
And I'll echo that. Thank you, Glenn. I mean, I know you've put in a lot of hard work and you've gotten a lot of feedback from the commissioners. And I think this final budget is the better for that. So thank you, and thank your team too. I know they've put in a lot of work, and I'm going to thank the commission too for putting in comments and making this better, the color coding, and you know, you had some great ideas, Robert. So I feel very confident that this is a good budget, and the only thing, like I said, I'd add is just to make sure the CIP plan is attached to it when we submit it to the Board of Supervisors.
Well, I would like to make a motion that we approve the 2016-2017 budget and approve the resolution 19-16.
Second.
Okay, a roll call,
If the
please.
Vice President will allow me, there was something I would believe I was supposed to read into the record. Should I do that before the motion?
The what?
It's in the,
It's in the
I
res-
thought it might be helpful to include in the record, and it's certainly past practice for this district, just to put on the record at this meeting the nature of the public notice that was provided in accordance with the Harbors and Navigation Code for the passage of the budget.
Perfect.
So it would have been my suggestion to staff that we take a moment to make sure that the record reflects our compliance with those statutory requirements. So that's what Glenn
Yes.
is referring to.
Please, Glenn, do what you need to do.
In accordance with section 6093.1 of the Harbors and Navigation Code, the board published a notice in the San Mateo Daily Journal on April 30th, 2016, specifying that the preliminary budget had been adopted as set forth. Copies of the preliminary budget were available for public inspection on the district's website, as well as at Pillar Point Harbor Master's Office, Oyster Point Marina Park, Harbor Master's Office, and the District Administrative Office. And on to today at 6:30 p.m. At the Municipal Services Building, South San Francisco, the board held a public hearing for the purpose of fixing the final integrated operating and capital budget for fiscal year 26-17.
Okay,
Thank you for your indulgence.
thank you. And I know we have a motion in a second, but I'm going to ask one more time if there's any public testimony. I'll open it up one more time. And I don't see any slips, so if there isn't any public testimony, then we can go for a roll call for the vote for the adoption of the 16-17 budget.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Chang-Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Perrone?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Great job.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, General Manager.
Okay, so moving on to item 6, which is to approve the purchase of 2 new Harbor District pickup trucks. Randy, staff report, please.
Thank you. Commissioners, the item before you this evening, or this item before you this evening is to purchase, a request to purchase 2 new pickups for the harbors, one for each harbor. This item was included in the budget that you just adopted. It was also included in the CIP that was approved a few months ago. This original budgeted amount was $80,000. The actual bid, even though we weren't required to, we went through the effort to get 3 actual bids from 3 different Ford dealers, staying Ford to be consistent with the newer vehicles that we have in the fleet. I'm happy to report that the local dealer, James Ford in Half Moon Bay, was the lowest bidder. And his total for the vehicle that we requested to be equipped was just under $65,000. Staff is requesting approval for a total amount of $70,000 to be approved and not to exceed amount. In the event there's changes in taxes, in the event that we determine that the tires that come on the vehicle are not adequate for our needs, et cetera, that way we don't have to come back to you for a couple of nickel and dime items. We do not anticipate having to spend those additional funds, which would then roll back into the budget. We are also requesting this now because of the lead time associated with the purchase. We would provide, with your approval, a purchase order or some document to the dealer so he can order the equipment, and then it would be available to us probably in November. So with that, I'm prepared to answer any questions.
I'll open it up for discussion. I don't have any public comment cards, but if there are any public comments, I'd open that up too. Okay, Commissioner discussion?
Well, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Robert, before Pietro makes the motion, do you have any? Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 6, approving the purchase of 2 new trucks, and to authorize the general manager to execute any necessary agreement with James Ford at Half Moon Bay.
Second.
Okay. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Carl?
Aye.
Commissioner Carolina?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 7. This is an item that was brought back from last, or has been brought back because of some questions that the commission had last month, and this item is in regards to exempt employee salary schedule and adjusting the salary schedule for Director of Administrative Services and Director of Operations. So Steve, would you please give us your staff report, even though we've read it. It was a good report too, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giancarelli. Yes, this may look a little familiar. I bring it to you at the last meeting, and at your request, I provided additional information regarding the issue of wage compaction, how the salary for one level of employee impacts the salary for those above and below. As you know, we did approve MOUs with 2 bargaining units that called for increases. For the bargaining units, the top step, bottom step are set in contract, and for the represented employees, the commission approves a range. And the range, unless the range is adjusted periodically, the range can get stale quickly, and the idea is the general manager negotiates that range, a spot within that range, based upon the qualifications of the person hired. The proposed action would adjust the salary schedules as shown for the 2 department head positions. Will not have an effect on any current employees, but only in fact have any direct and immediate effect on any employee if there was an employee in either of those 2 positions who was working at the bottom step of the range. The likelihood is that when these 2 positions are filled with permanent employees, that they will not be hired at the bottom of the range, but at some point above that. So while it won't necessarily directly affect any individual employee, it will keep that range contemporary and timely so that we can continue to move forward and attract quality candidates. This does not affect the general manager at all. The general manager's compensation is set separately and by the board, and only in open discussion at a regular scheduled meeting. did include a chart that showed the proposed changes and picked a couple of positions from each of the bargaining units to show where they would be over the same period of time. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I would additionally point out that I converted the department heads' salaries to an hourly rate in order to provide for better comparison with the representative.
That was very helpful. Thanks. Any
That was
questions?
suggestion of the board.
Right. Thanks. Any questions or comments? Okay, well, I have to say, Steve, thank you for doing this, because I was the one who kind of asked for it last time. And so I really appreciate the fact that you added the paragraph in here about the COLA and just the definition. So thank you for adding all of that. The definition of the compaction and all, just so that this is a public document and people have access to it.
It's a better document now than it was last time.
Okay. Robert.
I move that we adjust the salary schedule for Director of Administrative Services and Director of Operations.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Morales?
Aye.
Commissioner Carrabba?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Now we are on to item 8, which I think is an item that Commissioner Brennan put on the agenda to quote, for quote, the discussion and possible action regarding flawed harassment, retaliation, and discrimination investigations conducted by the San Mateo County Harbor District. And those are her words. She is not here, but we do have a public comment, and I'm happy to take public comment at this time. Brian Rogers, thank you, Mr. Rogers, for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I read through the agenda and hit this item, and just the title of it speaks volumes for how totally wrong this is. This is a discussion of closed session items right off the bat. Those investigations are not public. They were made public to a newspaper article a couple of months ago, when it was also made public that the district is being sued again. I don't understand how a commissioner could even submit this, let alone expect the public not to react. And then for her not to even bother to come to the meeting is pretty disturbing. This is another attempt by the same commissioner to rewrite history. I mean, these are, from what I understand of these investigations, they weren't even conducted directly by the harbor commissioner. They hired an outside third party. I know that because I remember you spending the money. If she thought they were flawed then, why didn't she bring that up? Why didn't she bring that up for discussion when they were paying them? At no point was that ever part of the discussion or the dialogue in any meeting, unless it was in one of the closed session ones that the public doesn't have access to. It was never brought out on the floor. So the idea that she would then come back months later, or even years later on a couple of them, and say that there's a problem with them, based on what? Is she going to then divulge to the entire public what these investigations discovered? Or is her plan just to write her own report again and call it history? Say this is what it is because I wrote it. I understand why you had to put it on the agenda, but I would think that as a group you would all say no, we're not going to have a part. We're not going to be a party to this. This is bad behavior. It's a continuation of the same bad behavior she's been presenting for years. The commissioner is a bully. She's been pointed out as a bully by staff, by lawsuits, by fellow commissioners. She can't deny it. Yet she will try again in a report that she distributes out to the public and to this commission. I wish she were here to hear this directly. I hope she listens to it on the video. But I have doubts that she will ever admit that what she's doing is wrong. And if she won't admit it, she won't change it. So I wish there was something the commission could do to stop the bad behavior, as I know it's already cost us $400,000 as taxpayers, and it's likely going to cost us that much more in the current lawsuit, because I don't see how that's going to go any different.
Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Rogers.
thanks.
Thank you. So, our policies, the board policies state that any commissioner can put an agenda item onto the agenda. And I would like to know the pleasure of this body, what you want to do to move forward. We could either table it or have this discussion. And what's the pleasure of this body, Robert?
Here's the thing. It's agendized, regardless of which commissioners are here and which decided not to show up tonight. I would like to have a discussion. That's my personal thing.
Pietro?
I would like to have, I have questions regarding this also, especially after the public comment that was heard.
Well, we don't have a staff report, which is normally, wouldn't be the case. But based on what I have seen and read, it sounds like that there were documents provided to Commissioner Brennan, general ledgers of the last 10 years of legal expenses, and a spreadsheet showing annual totals for the last 10 years. Staff is additionally updating an additional spreadsheet with costs annually, I think by law firm. And I guess that spreadsheet has not been completed as of this writing, and so, but how about the other documents? I think that whatever documents have been provided to one commissioner should be provided to all commissioners. I think that, I don't know, do we even have, did you even bring any of those?
I did not.
Okay. Okay, so since the body would like to discuss this, I am happy to open it up for discussion. Commissioner Bernardo.
Thank you. I'm just going to keep my comments brief, and mine is not really a discussion, it's more comments. First of all, just the title of this item. My goodness, flawed harassment, retaliation, and discrimination investigations conducted by the County Harbor District, which is us. This is so deeply insulting, just the title. I mean, I don't even know what the content is because I don't know what Commissioner Brennan, because she's not here, had in mind for this, but it's just so deeply insulting. As a commissioner, I'm insulted by it. I feel for the public. I'm embarrassed for the public. I mean, we've already heard one comment. And it's deeply insulting to the attorneys who work so hard for this harbor district. And that includes not just our attorney on record, but every attorney and consultant related to the harbor district who work tirelessly to reduce the exposure of the district and to protect and defend the harbor district legally. I mean, from litigation. While I'd like to be able to share some of the details of all of this, I cannot, because those are closed session items and they are confidential and I cannot talk about them at this time. So, that's where that is, but just the title of this item is just so incendiary. And maybe it was intentional, maybe it was intended to get me all riled up, but really I am, because it is just insulting to me, to the public, and to the attorneys who work tirelessly on behalf of the district to protect this district. It's just, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Paravano.
Thank you. It's difficult to comment on a title that is so negative and so disrespectful of the people that have done a lot of work to ensure a fair and unbiased product. The idea of using the word flawed really undermines the professions of the investigators, the attorneys, the staff that have taken on this role of providing a report to the San Mateo County Harbor District. I mean, if I was one of the professionals that was involved in one of these reports, it would really ring a bell of how people can be so negative toward one another and not accept what could be the truth, accept what has happened, and how to proceed, and how to respect the taxpayers of this county that have spent money toward compiling these reports. And if the comment that was made in public comment is true, that there was language that was said in closed session is made public, that's a violation of ethics. And I don't have any evidence of that, but if that is if that was said and it's true, then this brings on even further questions about this agenda item. I would like to ask staff if the investigations that were prompted by the Harbor District, have they been completed? Have the reports been completed by the investigators?
They haven't.
So the district has in open session on a number of occasions over the past, since I have been here and to my knowledge beforehand, engaged the services of outside investigators. In open session, those contracts have been approved. In all cases, for those contracts that I just mentioned, the investigators have submitted their reports, have invoiced the district, and have been paid for their services.
So in fact, I asked for those invoices 2 meetings ago when we discussed bills and claims, because and all of this, well, besides the last one with the McGrath investigations, I think a lot of this was before my time, so I had questions about the cost of these investigations, and thank you to the staff for providing me just the cost for the 5 outside or contracted investigators, which again, as our legal counsel has said, have been discussed in open session, but the total amount is $80,728, and that's just for the outside investigations. So I just want to thank the staff for getting this information to me, because I did ask for it. I think it's fair that the public know that was something that I had asked for, and that the board seemed to indulge me with, providing. And so, thank you for that. The other documents, I know that we don't have them today, but quite frankly, we're having this discussion now.
Put them up on the screen. I didn't bring them. The documents supplied to Commissioner Brennan?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I can put them up on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Would you do that?
Are they, I don't, which one are you talking about?
I think you're referring to, in my staff report I mentioned, or in the staff report I mentioned, general ledgers of the last 10 years and a spreadsheet showing annual totals.
Yes. I mean, whatever's been given.
General ledger document is just that, and it's a lot of detail, and it's, there's one of these for each year, and it's just attorney's fees. But there's also this, which shows the grand total of legal fees over the last 10 years.
Okay. I mean, I still fail to see what I guess my thing is, yes, these are fees that we've incurred there. It's terrible. And for what, right? But at the end of the day, flawed harassment, retaliation, discrimination, investigations, that's just an opinion. And the opinion is not necessarily tied to to the dollar amount. So I'm not even sure why we were spending time, staff was spending time even giving this to her, because the dollar amount has nothing to do with the fact that she thinks that they're flawed. There's still investigations that were done. So I am not trying to reprimand the staff. I get it, but I just failed to see the tie-in between her opinion that these are flawed versus the actual costs. Commissioner Bernardo.
Thank you. And related to that, there's one more thing I just want to say. And I mean, these bar charts are making my eyes like, oh my goodness. I mean, it's just astronomical just in the past 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of that happened in the last couple of years.
I mean, the spike started, 2013? I mean, it's just crazy. So, well, I want to say, speaking of just the whole issue of the Harbor District, okay, the title, okay, and again, I don't know what she's going to talk about. I didn't know what the background of this is until, you know, I'm seeing these being flashed on the boards right now for the first time. The fact that it says, quote, flawed harassment, retaliation, discrimination investigations conducted by the San Mateo County Harbor District. That's us. So it's a direct attack on us. So it's like, and I mean, I don't know if she realizes it, she's attacking herself too. You know, I mean, it's just, I just am boggled by this agenda item. And to Commissioner Corrali, I can't even speak right now, this is bothering me so much. It's just so, I'm so incensed by it. I really am, because it's so insulting to the district. And I agree, I mean, why do we entertain agenda items so incendiary? I mean, that's kind of, I'm not asking for an answer from staff, but I mean, that's something we should ask ourselves. It's like, if I were to just say, you know what, staff, I want an agenda item, and then XYZ, fill in the blank, something incendiary, crazy, like if I were to insult some elected body or something, who would even think of putting that up as an agenda item? I mean, that's just ludicrous. So, I mean, I think I'm just going to stop now. I just am so bothered by this. It's so insulting.
Do you have any comments?
If I could just follow up on my discussion or question for staff regarding the completion of the reports. They've been completed, invoiced. I believe that part of the process, part of the completion process is delivery of the product.
Which we have, right?
Can I caution commissioners though on closed session? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, Steve will jump in, I'm sure, but yeah, I think we're teetering towards closed session discussions here, and I want to just caution everyone that we cannot talk about things that have occurred in closed session. That's all I'm going to say. While I'd like to talk about it, we can't.
But what, I don't think that this is a closed session item. It's part of the process.
Okay, I apologize.
What are you trying
I
to
apologize.
say, Pietro?
As the commission and pertinent, let's say, pertinent relevant people been given the deliverables of the investigation. And I think that I don't think that's a solely closed session item. I think it's part of the investigative process.
I believe the answer is yes.
So basically, the investigations are closed.
Correct.
Right, so that, yes, so if they're I mean, we've already paid these bills of the $80,728 over the last 4 years, so, and we've received the investigations, the results. So, so yes, it sounds like that's
But
been.
I remember that we always had a report that was part of the part of the process, and I'm not sure whether the
What
commission.
kind of?
Just the results of the complaint, of the investigation.
I have not been in this situation before, but we've had some of those discussions in closed session, but have we ever had
Right.
those in open session? I don't think so. So I think at one of the closed sessions, you were traveling, so you couldn't
Right.
make it. But we had the last, that's what got my attention for the McGrath investigations, because that was, the last item that was, the last investigation product that we paid for in the bills and claims 2 meetings ago.
Yeah.
But I think that was the closed session item we discussed,
Yeah.
earlier, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
do
think you
bel-
weren't,
Yeah.
I think you were traveling at the
Okay.
time.
She's correct.
So-
She's
so-
correct. I think you were not at that closed
Yeah,
session.
and that's okay. I mean, the point is that we had that. But in terms of, well, do you have any other questions?
Can I
No.
clarify for the record?
Yes.
Because it may not be clear to anybody viewing the video later, that the McGrath investigation referred to is an investigator by the name of Michelle McGrath.
No relation to our
relation to-
general manager.
That's a good point.
Right, that's true.
That's a good
But-
point.
So do you have any other comments, Pietro?
No.
Okay, because I just want to piggyback on what Commissioner Bernardo said. I think that our legal representation does a great job. I think that Hanson and Bridget, I mean, Steve, you've just been terrific, and you've represented us well. And I know that Liebert Cassidy, who I think was helping us with some of our labor negotiations, they have done a terrific job too. So it's just, I guess it's a little confusing and mind-boggling to me as to why there would be these allegations basically insinuating that our legal representation that this board hired is not doing the job in the best interest of the Harbor District, which I think is completely false, her allegations. So I just want to thank our legal representation for the work that you've done. And I can imagine what you have been going through, just looking at the outside investigation invoice that I have, or, well, spreadsheet. It looks like a lot of this stuff has happened over the last 2 to 3 years. So I know it's a lot of extra work. But I would like to know what we can do today. We've already had this discussion, and I don't know, I'd like to put this discussion to bed at this point.
Right, that was my next question, is procedurally, okay, since we're here and, you know, we have a quorum, do we have to, I mean, tell me that we don't have to table this and have this pop up again at another agenda item. I mean, this is just, because I'll vote this down today. Can we, what action can we do on this? Number 8, what can we do on this?
The commission is, the matter is agendized as discussion of possible action.
Okay.
So the commission, in regard to this particular topic, I would think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, has broad latitude in whether or not to discuss in the future. Certainly, yeah.
Could you give us
Yeah.
half a moment to?
Okay.
Sure.
So I think the board has broad latitude in what it can, what action it can take. The board should remember that there is a policy that allows any commissioner to bring any one item to the board. This board, if the board chooses not to want to discuss this again, policy notwithstanding, the board could direct that this or any related item not come back. The board could recommend that this come back to the board when Commissioner Brennan is present, so that she can present her opinion.
I'm inclined, just personally, I'm inclined to, through the chair, I'm inclined to deal with this tonight. That's kind of where I'm leaning, because it's on the agenda, and I mean, it's not our fault that she's not here to talk about her agenda item that she chose to agendize.
But I mean, we're having that discussion now.
Okay, well,
I guess my thing is, I just don't know how much more time I would like the staff to spend on this.
Yeah,
Because there's so
that's
much other
also-
stuff that needs to get done.
that's also a good point. So,
Yeah.
Yes, please.
sorry, I'm sorry I keep
No, no,
jumping
no,
in.
keep-
Can we vote this agenda item down?
Well, there's-
I mean,
or
could
give
we do that? I don't
direction
even
to
know what this
staff,
is,
Or
but-
give
I think
direction to
there's no
staff.
Sort of recommended, there's no recommended action, so I'm not sure what you'll be voting down.
Well, whatever this agenda item was supposed to intend to do.
The commission, if I'm interpreting you correctly, Commissioner Bernardo, the commission could make a motion that it finds that the investigations are not flawed, and that this item is not to return for discussion by the board.
I like that. I like that.
Do you want to
Would
make
be
that
within your
motion?
discretion based upon the way the item is agendized.
Okay.
So the motion would be that, that the investigations are not flawed. The board concluded the investigations are not flawed, and that this item has been discussed and should not be brought back onto a future agenda. Would that be within, and therefore no more work by staff should be put towards this item? I also want to make it very clear that we are not retaliating against Commissioner Brennan. That is not the intent here. I think that the intent here is that the board is very happy with its legal representation, that the board is confident that the work that's been done on claims that have been brought against the district and Commissioner Brennan have been very objective. And again, without going into closed session information, I can say that I'm very happy with what I've seen. And I know that that Commissioner Brennan had a problem with bias, and I just did not see that in these investigation reports. So I just want to make it very clear that this discussion is not ganging up on her. It is not retaliation, but an opinion that everything that we have seen so far has been very unbiased, very objective, and the work that we've received from legal counsel, both from Hanson and Bridget and Liebert Cassidy, has been top rate.
I will second the motion, and I have a question for staff, probably specifically for legal counsel. And it might be an added amendment to the motion, Commissioner Bernardo. Could this increase our liability for risk if this agenda item states that these investigations were flawed? Could one of the investigators that was hired by the district let's say ask for damages due to inflammatory comments, inflammatory agenda items? And
That could damage their professional reputation.
Yeah, exactly. This
I
is
didn't even
where
think about
I, in my original comments, I was sensitive to that. If that's the case, I would like to make an amendment to the motion that would remove, that would isolate the
I see what
four
you're-
commissioners
I see what you're saying.
from any type of, what's
Legal.
Legal liability.
risk liability, legal liability brought on by this agenda item.
Steve Miller, I know it's kind of out there,
There's a
but,
lot there to unpack, let me try to.
right, but I mean, I think it's a legitimate concern.
First of all, we lawyers have pretty thick skins.
You have to.
We've been called worse than flawed. So I do not, it's an interesting idea, but I do not think that the district is placed at risk for what you're asserting would be sort of defamation against an unnamed individual for what seems pretty clearly to be the opinion of a commission. So I don't have a high level of concern. Notwithstanding that, while we lawyers are thick-skinned, we are also human, and if you wish to amend the motion to express a specific opinion about a specific investigator or a specific law firm or a specific lawyer, there's no reason why you could not do that. I don't think that would necessarily be a risk avoidance strategy, but it might it might be part of what I hear as your desire to put this to bed and not to bring it back for future discussion.
So you can make your amendment.
Correct. Isn't it true that, I mean, you mentioned, you referenced lawyers, but I believe that the investigators were not lawyers.
They are all.
No, they're all
Oh,
lawyers.
they were, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And the lawyers, the lawyers are the investigators. There's me from Hanson Bridget, and there's Arlene Kachalia, your
From
labor
Legal
employment
Counsel.
counsel from the Legal Task.
So, okay, if you want to make.
The
you wanna-
investigators, I should say, are neither Hanson Bridget nor Lieber Cassidy.
Right.
They are independent.
Right,
third
contractors,
parties.
right, third party.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I got lost in this. Can we repeat what the original motion was? I'm trying to understand what the original motion was. I'm sorry.
That this is not a defraud investigation. That was
By the San Mateo
conducted-
County Harbor District.
That, I mean, there was other language that got tacked on, and I wrote as fast as I could.
Well, the original motion was that it was that the investigations conducted by the San Mateo County Harbor District are not flawed, and that this item should not come back
At a
on another
future.
agenda, and therefore staff should not be working on.
A commissioner, I forgot to note which commissioner made a point of addressing the fact that this was not intended as retaliation against Commissioner.
I
Brown.
did. I
Is
made
that
that point.
part of the motion?
We could make it part of the motion, yeah. If, I mean, I'm, at the, whatever, I'm open to any suggestions, but I think the basic motion is there and we can add on.
I would like, personally, I'm gonna support this motion, but I don't like that last part.
Which part?
The part about the retaliation stuff, because I think that just muddies the motion. I think the motion is very clear. No flaw in the investigations conducted by the San Mateo County Harbor District, and that this item not return in the future. I mean, very simple.
And you wanted to add
I
something?
think in respect to Commissioner Bernardo, that would be the motion.
That's where I'm.
That the commission finds no flaw.
In the investigation conducted by the Harbor District.
Did the commission want to add something, speaking to the last little part of the discussion about
Attorneys.
firms? You want to call out? Hanson
I would
Bridget,
leave that to
Lieber Cassidy,
Commissioner Bernardo.
Here's the thing. When I see, quote, investigations conducted by the San Mateo County Harbor District, I mean, that's an assumption of the entire district. That includes our consultants, all of our attorneys, anyone we hired. I mean, that's everybody. That's pretty inclusive. So I don't think we need to, again, I don't want to muddy the motion. It's very clear to me that no flaw and that this does not come back in the future. I mean, that's, to me, that's it. Everything else is just icing.
Very good.
Okay, I second it.
Okay.
So the motion maker was Commissioner Chankrani.
No, that was by Commissioner Bernardo. I was just helping him word it.
Yes, thank you.
Seconded by Commissioner Paravano. And we've had our discussion, but I don't have any more speaker cards, but if there are any more public comments, I would be open to having those since we had one before. If there are no public comments, then I'll close public comments and we can do a roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Crowley?
Aye?
Commissioner Germano?
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Steve and Steve.
Thank you for your kind words.
Well, we mean it. Okay, so we're now into section F, which is basically staff reports. Steve McGraw, General Manager, item 9. It was a pretty self-explanatory report from you. If there are any questions, if you wanted to add on to that.
Thank you, Commissioner Giancarlo. I really got nothing to add. I'd be happy to answer any questions about anything in the report or anything I've been up to over the last, or during the month of May.
Any comments? Okay. Glenn, our interim director of administrative services, thanks for your report. Do you have anything to add? I mean, again, it's pretty self-explanatory.
I have nothing to add, but certainly could entertain questions.
I have a question regarding the Public Records Act. Where are we in, have we gotten any more? I mean, you've listed them here from.
It has been,
Actually, the Daily Post, not the San Mateo Post.
it has been very quiet. We have responded to every request that is out there, with the exception of the request from the city of South San Francisco, which is awaiting our server migration.
Okay.
Could ask you to clarify the one slight typo in that one around.
Oh, I used the word redacted when I should have used retracted in reference to Commissioner Brennan's travel reimbursement. She retracted her expense
Right.
request.
Oh,
I
okay.
used the wrong word, as I often do.
But
much
it's
to
also
everyone
the
here is
Daily
amusement.
Post, right?
It's the
Glenn,
Daily
it's
Post.
the Daily
Yeah,
Post.
there's no San Mateo Post.
Daily Post.
Yes, it's got to read the Daily Post.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you again for your work on the budget, Glenn. Great job.
Oh, just that.
Anything else, Robert?
You're welcome.
Pietro? Okay. The interim director of operations, Randy, thanks for your report too. You had some great highlights for the
Thank
month
you.
of May. Want to
Um,
highlight any of that?
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Obviously, been pretty busy. We're getting a lot of projects going. There was a specific request at the last meeting, I believe, by President Mateusz regarding Surfers Beach, so I tried to include updated information in there about that. And anything else, like I said, been busy, so if you have any questions, I'm prepared to answer them.
Any questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay, and then the harbor master, or assistant harbor master for Oyster Point, Jim isn't here, so is there anything that you need to fill us in on, Steve? It's pretty, okay. And then, any questions about Oyster Point? Oh, I have one quick question, sorry, and I'm just thinking about it because we just approved the, Prop SF, so we're working with Jim and his staff with all of that, right? Okay, great.
Working with the assistant harbor master and staff on items
For
related to
the-
Prop SF.
Yes, oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, and then finally, John Draper, the Assistant Harbor Master for Pillar Point. I don't think, is there anything that we should know that you want to add on, Steve?
No, I think what I would say is that in both harbors, we're starting crackdown on unregistered vessels. And,
Wrote 76 citations in Oyster Point alone today
76 citations for,
for expired, for vessels not having the sticker.
right?
They might be registered. In a couple of instances, we were tracked down by the offender in which we, canceled the citation. But we had one gentleman come in today that said, well, I haven't registered my boat for 15 years. Why are you citing me now? So, I said, we're enforcing the rules.
It's worth pointing out that this did not come unannounced.
Right.
All of our tenants received at least 2 letters.
Right.
that this enforcement action is coming. This is the low-hanging fruit in ensuring that we have viable marinas and harbors. And I think it's especially important given that we look to the Division of Boating and Waterways on a regular basis for funding. And one of their sources of funding is registration fees for vessels. So our part of the deal, if you will, is to make sure that the vessels in our harbors and marinas are registered.
Okay. There's nothing else, then that is
Wait,
it
that
for
cost
the
$10.
staff reports.
Commissioner, if I could
Yes.
interrupt real quick, I'm remiss, I meant to mention also and call out specifically that the Spirit of Sacramento vessel is going to auction on July 15th.
Oh, good.
There's a
Yes.
link on our website
Yeah.
for anybody who has a desire to
To bid?
check out the vessel. We've got lots of pictures, and it's a pretty thorough, investigation of the craft, so hopefully we sell it.
Great,
Everyone here has
thank
always
you.
wanted to own their own paddle wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, yes.
I know. Thanks, Randy. That's a good update, too.
Yes. that is-
So I guess we'll know how much by the
Next meeting.
July 20th meeting, right?
But
The bid.
yeah, it has to be, that sale is set for the 15th.
Right.
We'll give an oral update.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
That's
You'll tell us
July
if it's
20th.
sold.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
You'll tell us if anyone bought it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So now we're at the Harbor Commissioners Committee reports. I don't think, but, okay, so I do have just one announcement, and that's that the Strategic Planning Committee is meeting on June 22nd at 2:30. That's what I've got on my calendar. No other committee reports, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I will second.
All in favor? Or do we have to do a roll call on this
We
too?
do, we do,
Okay,
every
roll
time.
call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Germano?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.